The sun was setting over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and deep crimson. Route 66 stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of cracked asphalt cutting through the vast emptiness of sand and sagebrush. The heat still radiated from the ground even as the temperature began to drop, creating shimmering waves that danced on the horizon like ghosts of travelers past. Marcus Cole had been riding for 6 hours straight. His Harley-Davidson Road King rumbled beneath him with the steady heartbeat of a faithful companion, its chrome catching the last rays of daylight. At 52 years old, Marcus had logged more miles on 2 wheels than most people drove in a lifetime. His leather vest bore the patches of the Iron Brotherhood, a motorcycle club known not for trouble, but for the quiet work they did in communities across the Southwest. Veterans supporting veterans, families helping families, brothers standing for those who had no one else to stand for them. His silver hair, pulled back into a short ponytail, whipped in the wind. Deep lines creased his face, each one a story, each one a memory of roads traveled and battles fought. 20 years in the Marine Corps had taught him discipline. The open road had taught him peace. He was heading to Flagstaff for the annual memorial ride, a tradition that brought together riders from across the country to honor fallen soldiers. It was the kind of event that filled his heart with purpose, that reminded him why he still rode, why he still wore the patches, why he still answered when brothers called. The gas station appeared on his right like a mirage made real. A weathered sign read, "Last stop gas and garage, next station 87 miles. Marcus checked his fuel gauge. Quarter tank. He could make it, but his instincts told him to stop. After decades of listening to that inner voice, he had learned never to ignore it. He pulled off the highway, the crunch of gravel under his tires a familiar sound. The station was small, just 2 pumps and a garage with a rusted Coca-Cola sign hanging crooked on the wall. A pickup truck sat near the garage, and an old man in overalls was working on something under the hood. But it was the motorcycle near the pumps that caught Marcus's attention. A Honda Shadow, maybe 15 years old, sat silent and still. Its owner stood beside it, a woman who looked to be in her mid-30s, her arms crossed over her chest as she stared at the machine with the kind of frustration that only comes from being truly stuck. Marcus pulled up to the pump next to her and killed his engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening. He removed his helmet, hung it on the handlebars, and nodded in her direction. "Evening," he said, his voice low and rough from disuse. She looked up, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made him pause. Not fear, though there was a trace of it. Not anger, though that was there too. It was exhaustion, the kind that goes deeper than physical tiredness. The kind that settles into the bones and makes every day feel like climbing a mountain. "Evening," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Marcus began filling his tank, the gasoline fumes mixing with the scent of desert sage. He watched her from the corner of his eye as she crouched down next to her bike, checking connections, pressing buttons, trying to coax life from the silent engine. "She giving you trouble?" he asked, nodding toward the Honda. The woman stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. She was wearing a worn leather jacket that had seen better days, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid. No makeup, no jewelry except for a simple silver band on her right hand. Everything about her suggested someone who traveled light. "She's dead," the woman said flatly. "Fuel pump, I think. Maybe the starter. I'm not sure anymore." Marcus finished filling his tank and walked over to her bike. He knelt down, his knees protesting the movement, and looked at the engine. He had spent enough years working on motorcycles to recognize most problems by sight and sound. He pressed the start button. A weak clicking noise. Then nothing. "Could be the fuel pump," he agreed. "Could also be the battery connections. Mind if I take a closer look?" She hesitated for just a moment, then stepped back and gestured for him to proceed. "Be my guest. I've tried everything I know." Marcus retrieved a small toolkit from his saddlebag and got to work. He checked the battery terminals, cleaned them, tightened them. He traced the wiring, looking for loose connections or corrosion. As he worked, he became aware of the woman watching him with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing every move. "You know your way around bikes," she said. It wasn't a question. "Been riding since I was 18, Marcus replied without looking up. "Fixed more engines than I can count. Some things you never forget." The old man from the garage had wandered over, wiping his hands on a rag that was dirtier than his fingers. His name tag read, "Earl. That bike's been sitting there for 2 hours, Earl said, shaking his head. "Told her I could look at it tomorrow, but I don't have the parts she needs. Nearest dealer is in Flagstaff." Marcus nodded, still focused on the Honda. "When's your next delivery?" "Wednesday," Earl said. "Maybe Thursday if the truck's running behind." Marcus looked up at the woman. "That's 4 days from now." "I know," she said quietly. "I've been doing the math." There was something in her voice that made Marcus stop what he was doing. He stood up slowly, his eyes meeting hers. In that moment, he saw it clearly. The fear she was trying to hide, the desperation she was struggling to contain. This wasn't just about a broken motorcycle. This was about something much bigger. "Where are you headed?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the last sliver of sun was disappearing behind the distant mountains. "Portland," she finally said. "I have to get to Portland." "That's a long way from here," Marcus observed. "About 1,500 miles. "I know." "You got someone coming to help? Family? Friends?" She shook her head slowly. "No, there's no one." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant hum of a passing truck on the highway. Marcus had seen a lot in his years on the road. He had encountered people from all walks of life, heard stories that would break a heart or inspire a soul. He had learned to read people the way he read the road, watching for signs, anticipating turns, knowing when to speed up and when to slow down. Everything about this woman told him she was running from something, or running toward something. Maybe both. "What's in Portland?" he asked gently. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she would shut down, build the wall higher, retreat into silence. But then her shoulders dropped slightly, as if the weight she was carrying had become too heavy to bear alone. "My daughter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My daughter is in Portland." The words hung in the air like a prayer. Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had no children of his own, but he understood the bond between parent and child. He had seen it in the eyes of soldiers fighting to get home. He had seen it in the faces of mothers waiting at airport gates. He had seen it in the tears of fathers burying sons and daughters who came back from war in flag-draped coffins. "How old is she?" Marcus asked. 16, the woman replied. "Her name is Emma." "And she's waiting for you?" Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, shame, determination. "She doesn't know I'm coming," she admitted. "She hasn't seen me in 3 years." Marcus absorbed this information without judgment. He had learned long ago that every person carries burdens invisible to the world, that the stories we tell ourselves about strangers are almost always wrong. "My name is Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "Marcus Cole." She looked at his hand for a moment, then took it. Her grip was firm, her palm calloused. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah Mitchell." "Well, Sarah Mitchell," Marcus said, releasing her hand and looking back at her motorcycle. "Looks like your bike is going to need more than I can fix with what I've got here. Fuel pump's shot. Battery's weak too. Even if we get her running, I wouldn't trust her to make it another 50 miles, let alone 1,500. Sarah's face fell. "I can't afford to wait until Wednesday. I can't afford to wait at all." "Why the rush?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Sarah's eyes glistened, but she blinked back the tears before they could fall. "Because I got a call 3 days ago. Emma is in trouble, real trouble, the kind that doesn't wait for fuel pump deliveries or convenient timing." "What kind of trouble?" Sarah turned away, hugging herself against a chill that had nothing to do with the cooling desert air. "The family she's been living with, my ex-husband's brother and his wife. They're not who everyone thinks they are. Emma called me from a borrowed phone. She was scared, Marcus. I've never heard her so scared. Marcus felt his instincts sharpening, the same way they did in combat when danger was close. Scared of what? She didn't have time to explain everything, Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. But she told me she needed to get out. She begged me to come. She said... Sarah stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. What did she say? Sarah took a shaky breath. She said, Mom, please, before it's too late. The words settled over them like a weight. Marcus had heard those kinds of words before. He had heard them from soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. He had heard them from veterans battling demons that followed them home from war. He had heard them from children whose innocence was being stolen by people who should have protected them. He looked at Sarah Mitchell, standing alone beside her dead motorcycle in the middle of the Arizona desert, and he made a decision. My bike's dead, Sarah said again, more to herself than to him. I've got no money for a rental, no bus coming through until tomorrow night, and even if there was, it would take me 3 days to get to Portland by bus. 3 days I don't have. Marcus walked to his Harley and ran his hand along the leather seat. He had planned his route carefully, timed his stops, arranged to meet his brothers in Flagstaff. The memorial ride was important to him. It was a promise he made every year, but some promises matter more than others. My bike's dead, Sarah repeated, her voice cracking. Marcus turned to face her, and something in his expression made her stop. Good, he said, his voice calm and steady. I'll stay a while. Sarah blinked. What? Marcus reached into his saddlebag and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Hank Reeves, president of the Iron Brotherhood's Flagstaff chapter. Brother Hank, Marcus said when the call connected. It's Cole. I'm going to miss the memorial. Something came up. He listened to the response, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. I know, Marcus said. I wouldn't miss it if it wasn't important. But this is. Trust me on that. He ended the call and tucked the phone away. What are you doing? Sarah asked, confusion and hope warring in her voice. I'm going to help you get to Portland, Marcus said simply. Why? You don't even know me. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, the hard lines of his face softened. I know enough. I know you're a mother trying to reach her daughter. I know that something is wrong, and you're the only one who can make it right. I know that you're scared and alone, and you've got no one else to turn to. He paused, letting the words sink in. And I know that I was supposed to stop at this gas station tonight. I don't believe in coincidences, Sarah. I believe in moments, and this is one of those moments. Sarah's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she wiped them away quickly, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. I can't ask you to do this, she said. You didn't ask, Marcus replied. I offered. There's a difference. He walked back to her motorcycle and looked at it thoughtfully. Earl, you got a secure place to store this bike until she can come back for it? Earl nodded. Got a shed out back. I can keep it there. No charge. Marcus looked at Sarah. You hear that? Your bike will be safe. When this is over, you can come back for it. Or I'll help you make other arrangements. Sarah stood motionless, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness of strangers. But the memorial ride, you said it was important. It is, Marcus agreed. But sometimes the best way to honor those who gave everything is to give something yourself. My brothers will understand. They would do the same. He walked to his Harley and swung his leg over the seat. Then he patted the space behind him. You ever ridden on the back of a Harley? Sarah laughed despite herself, a short, surprised sound that seemed foreign to her own ears. No, never. First time for everything, Marcus said, handing her a spare helmet from his saddlebag. It's about a 20-hour ride to Portland if we take shifts and keep the stops short. We can make it in 2 days, maybe less if the weather holds. Sarah took the helmet and turned it over in her hands. She looked at Marcus, this stranger who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she hadn't even known she was praying. Why are you doing this? She asked again, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus considered the question. He thought about his years in the Marines, about the brothers he had lost, about the people he had saved, and the ones he couldn't. He thought about the Iron Brotherhood and the code they lived by. He thought about all the roads he had traveled and all the lessons they had taught him. "Because everyone needs someone in their corner," he said finally. "Because I've been lost before, and someone helped me find my way. Because that's what we do. Not just as brothers, but as human beings. We take care of our own. And tonight, Sarah Mitchell, you're one of ours." Sarah climbed onto the back of the Harley, her hands finding the grips on either side of the seat. She was trembling slightly, but not from cold or fear. It was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "Ready," she replied. He kicked the engine to life, and the Harley roared beneath them. As they pulled out of the gas station and onto the highway, the stars were beginning to emerge overhead, scattered across the darkening sky like promises waiting to be kept. Sarah wrapped her arms around Marcus's waist and held on tight. The wind rushed past them, carrying away the dust and the heat and the despair that had threatened to swallow her whole. Ahead of them, the road stretched into the unknown. But for the first time in a very long time, Sarah Mitchell wasn't facing it alone, and somewhere in Portland, a 16-year-old girl named Emma was holding on to hope, waiting for a miracle she didn't dare believe would come. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. If stories of ordinary people becoming heroes for strangers touch your soul, hit that subscribe button right now. Because we're just getting started, and this journey is about to take a turn you won't expect. The night wrapped around them like a dark blanket as they rode north through Arizona. Marcus kept the pace steady, not too fast, mindful of the precious cargo behind him. Sarah had never ridden on a motorcycle before, but she adapted quickly, leaning with him through the curves, trusting his judgment as the miles disappeared beneath their wheels. They stopped around midnight at a truck stop outside of Kingman. The parking lot was half filled with semis, their engines idling in the cool night air. The smell of diesel and coffee hung in the atmosphere like a permanent fixture. Marcus pulled into a parking spot away from the trucks and killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost jarring after hours of constant rumble. "How are you holding up?" he asked, turning to look at Sarah. She dismounted on shaky legs, removing her helmet and running her fingers through her windswept hair. "Better than I expected," she admitted. "My legs feel like jelly, but otherwise okay." "You'll get used to it," Marcus said with a slight smile. "First time's always the hardest." They walked into the truck stop, a fluorescent-lit oasis of vending machines, coffee pots, and Formica counters. A handful of truckers occupied the booths, nursing cups of coffee and plates of eggs, their eyes glazed with the fatigue of long-haul driving. Marcus ordered 2 coffees and a couple of sandwiches. They found a booth in the corner, away from prying ears, and sat down across from each other. "So," Marcus said, wrapping his hands around the warm cup, "tell me what's really going on with Emma. All of it." Sarah took a deep breath. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows under her eyes, emphasizing the exhaustion that had carved itself into her features. 3 years ago, I was in a bad place," she began, her voice low. "I was drinking. A lot. My ex-husband, David, had left 2 years before that. Took me a while to fall apart completely, but when I did, I fell hard." Marcus listened without interruption, his face impassive. "I lost my job. Couldn't pay the bills. Couldn't take care of Emma the way she deserved. One night, I got pulled over with Emma in the car. I was over the limit. Not by much, but enough. That's when everything changed." "Social services got involved?" Sarah nodded. "My ex-husband was already gone. He moved to Asia for work and basically abandoned us both. But his brother, Tom, stepped in. He and his wife, Claire, offered to take Emma in temporarily while I got myself together." "Temporarily," Marcus repeated. "That's what we all agreed. 6 months, a year at most. I would go to rehab, get clean, find a job, get a place. Then Emma would come back to me." "But that's not what happened." Sarah's hands tightened around her cup. "No, I did everything I was supposed to do. I went to rehab. I got clean. I got a job. 2 jobs, actually. I found an apartment. I did everything by the book, but every time I tried to get Emma back, something went wrong. What do you mean? Court dates would get postponed. Paperwork would get lost. Tom and Claire's lawyer would file new motions, raise new concerns. I couldn't afford a good attorney, so I was always playing catch-up. And the whole time, Emma was getting older, getting more settled in Portland, and I was becoming more and more like a stranger to her. Marcus frowned. That sounds deliberate. I think it was, Sarah said quietly. I think Tom wanted to keep Emma for good. He and Claire couldn't have children of their own. To them, Emma was the daughter they'd always wanted, and I was just the failure who couldn't take care of her. Did Emma want to stay with them? Sarah's expression cracked. At first, I don't know. She was angry at me for a long time. Rightfully so. I put her in danger. I let her down. But as time passed, we started talking again. Phone calls, texts when we could manage them. She told me things were changing in that house, things she didn't understand. What kinds of things? Tom became controlling. He monitored everything, her phone, her computer, her social media. He didn't let her have friends over, didn't let her go to parties or school events. He said it was for her protection, but Emma felt like she was being watched all the time, like she was a prisoner instead of a family member. Marcus had seen this pattern before. Isolation, control. The slow tightening of a grip that felt like protection, but was really possession. And 3 days ago, he prompted. 3 days ago, Emma called me from a friend's phone. The only time she's allowed to be alone is when she walks to school and back. She borrowed her friend's phone and called me on the way home. She was crying, barely coherent. Sarah's voice wavered. She said Tom had found out she'd been communicating with me. He was furious. He told her she would never see me again. He said he would make sure of it. And then he said something that terrified her. What did he say? Sarah's eyes met Marcus's, and the fear there was raw and unfiltered. He said, "You belong to us now, and no one is going to take you away." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Has he hurt her? Marcus asked, his voice controlled but hard. She didn't say directly, but I know my daughter. I could hear it in her voice. Something has happened. Something she's afraid to tell me. And it's getting worse. Marcus processed this information. He had spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, much of it in intelligence and operations. He knew how to assess threats. He knew how to plan missions. And he knew, with the certainty that comes from hard experience, that this situation was dangerous. Have you contacted the police? He asked. I tried, Sarah said bitterly. They said that since Tom and Claire have legal guardianship, and since Emma hasn't made any specific accusations, there's nothing they can do. They told me to work through the courts. Through the same courts that have been blocking me for 3 years. What about the school, teachers, counselors? Emma said Tom told them she has emotional problems, that I traumatized her and she makes things up for attention. He's got everyone believing I'm the villain of this story. Marcus understood now why Sarah had gotten on that motorcycle and started riding. Why she had pushed that Honda until it died. Why she was sitting in a truck stop in the middle of the night, pouring out her soul to a stranger. Because sometimes the system fails. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you become the people you need protection from. And sometimes the only option left is to take matters into your own hands. What's your plan when you get to Portland? Marcus asked. Sarah laughed humorlessly. I don't have one. I just know I have to be there. I have to see her face to face. I have to tell her I'm fighting for her, that I never stopped fighting, that I will do whatever it takes to bring her home. And if Tom tries to stop you, then I'll deal with that when it happens. Marcus studied her for a long moment. He saw the determination behind the exhaustion, the steel beneath the desperation. This was a woman who had hit rock bottom and climbed her way back up, only to find that the world had moved on without her. But she hadn't given up. She was still fighting. You're going to need more than determination, Marcus said finally. You're going to need a plan, and maybe some help. I don't have money for lawyers or private investigators, Sarah said. I barely had enough to fill my gas tank. That's not the kind of help I'm talking about. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He scrolled through a list of names, each one a brother, a friend, a fellow veteran who had proven themselves in ways both large and small. The Iron Brotherhood has chapters all across the country, Marcus explained. We're not just a riding club, we're a family, and when one of us needs help, we answer the call. But I'm not one of you, Sarah pointed out. Not officially, Marcus agreed. But you're under my protection now. That makes your fight our fight. He found the name he was looking for. Ray Ghost Thompson. Portland chapter, former Army Ranger. The kind of man who could move through shadows and make things happen without leaving a trace. I'm going to make some calls, Marcus said. By the time we get to Portland, we'll have people on the ground ready to help. People who know how to handle situations like this without making them worse. What do you mean, handle? Marcus met her eyes steadily. I mean, we're going to find out exactly what's going on in that house. We're going to document everything. And then we're going to make sure the right people see it. People who will listen. People who will act. And if that doesn't work? Marcus didn't answer right away. He thought about the oath he had taken as a Marine. He thought about the promises he had made to his brothers in the Iron Brotherhood. He thought about the children he had seen in war zones, the innocence that had been stolen from them, the darkness that had tried to swallow them whole. Then we'll do what needs to be done, he said quietly. But we'll do it the right way. Not for revenge, not for anger, for Emma, for her future, for the life she deserves. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand on Marcus's. Her eyes were wet, but her grip was strong. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know why you stopped at that gas station tonight. I don't know why you decided to help me. But I want you to know, you're the first person in 3 years who has believed me. The first person who has looked at me and seen something other than a failure. Marcus turned his hand over and clasped hers. You're not a failure, Sarah. You're a mother who loves her daughter. You're a woman who made mistakes and paid for them. You're a fighter who refused to quit even when the whole world was against you. That's not failure. That's courage. They sat in silence for a moment, the connection between them forged by shared purpose and mutual respect. Finally, Marcus released her hand and stood up. We should get back on the road. Try to make Nevada before sunrise. You can sleep for a few hours and then we'll push on. Sarah stood as well, gathering herself. I don't think I'll be able to sleep. Try anyway, Marcus said. You're going to need your strength for what's ahead. They walked back out into the night, the cool air a welcome contrast to the stuffiness of the truck stop. The stars still blazed overhead, a canopy of light in the desert darkness. As they approached the Harley, Marcus noticed something. A piece of paper tucked under the windshield. He pulled it out and unfolded it. The note was written in blocky handwriting. 5 words. She's not safe. Hurry. Marcus looked around the parking lot, searching for the source, but there was no one, just the idling trucks and the empty spaces between them. What is it? Sarah asked, seeing the tension in his posture. He showed her the note. Her face went pale. How? She breathed. How would anyone know we're here? Marcus folded the note and tucked it into his vest pocket. His mind was racing, analyzing possibilities, assessing threats. Someone's been watching, he said. Maybe watching you. Maybe watching both of us. Either way, it confirms what you already know. Emma is in danger, and we're running out of time. He swung his leg over the Harley and brought the engine to life. Get on, he said. We're not stopping again until we absolutely have to. Sarah climbed on behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist with newfound urgency. As they pulled out of the parking lot and back onto the highway, Marcus felt the weight of the note in his pocket. A warning from an unknown ally, a confirmation of their darkest fears. Somewhere in Portland, a 16-year-old girl was waiting. And the clock was ticking. They rode through the night, the stars wheeling overhead as the miles disappeared beneath them. Nevada welcomed them with its endless stretches of darkness, broken only by the occasional glow of distant towns. The desert had a different character here, colder, harder, more unforgiving. Marcus kept his focus on the road, but his mind was working through the problem. Tom and Claire, legal guardians with a tight grip on a child who wasn't theirs, the isolation, the control, the threat that Emma would never see her mother again. He had seen this kind of behavior before, in war zones, in domestic situations, in the darker corners of human nature. Some people believed they owned other people. They wrapped their possession in the language of love and protection, but it was really about power, about control, about refusing to let go of something they had decided was theirs. And those people were dangerous. Not because they were violent, though they could be, but because they were convinced they were right. They had built a narrative in which they were the heroes, and anyone who challenged them was a threat to be eliminated. Marcus didn't know Tom. He didn't know what the man was capable of, but he knew the type. And he knew that the closer they got to Portland, the more careful they would need to be. Around 4 a.m, they crossed into California. The sky was beginning to lighten on the eastern horizon, a thin line of gray that promised the coming of dawn. They stopped at a rest area to stretch their legs and use the facilities. Sarah was pale and exhausted, but there was a determination in her eyes that Marcus recognized. The look of a soldier going into battle. The look of someone who had accepted that there was no turning back. "Tell me about Emma," Marcus said as they stood by the Harley, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. "Not the situation. Her. What's she like?" Sarah's expression softened. "She's amazing. Smart. Smarter than me, that's for sure. She loves to read. She wants to be a writer someday. She writes these stories, fantasy mostly, about brave girls who go on adventures and save the day. Sounds like she knows what she wants." She always did. Even when she was little, she had this clarity about things. She would look at the world and see it for what it was, the good and the bad, and she would make her own judgments. She never just accepted what people told her. Marcus nodded. That kind of independence can be a gift. It can also be a threat to people who want to control you. "That's exactly it," Sarah said. "Tom doesn't like that Emma thinks for herself. He wants her to be grateful, obedient, the perfect daughter he never had." Marcus understood. He had met men like Tom before, men who confused love with ownership, men who believed that controlling someone was the same as protecting them. "She sounds like a survivor," Marcus said, "and survivors find a way." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I just hope we get there in time." "We will," Marcus promised. "Now let's ride." They pushed through California, the landscape changing from desert to farmland to forest as they climbed northward. The hours blurred together in a rhythm of wind and engine and the endless ribbon of highway stretching ahead. Marcus had made his calls during their brief stops. Ghost Thompson was on standby in Portland. 2 other brothers from the Oregon chapter were ready to assist. They had already started gathering information on Tom and Claire, their routines, their neighbors, the layout of their house. By the time they crossed into Oregon, the plan was taking shape. It was late afternoon when they finally saw the sign, "Welcome to Portland." Sarah's grip on Marcus tightened. After 3 years of separation, after countless obstacles and disappointments, she was finally here. They rode to a small motel on the outskirts of the city, where Ghost Thompson was waiting. He was a lean man in his 40s with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore the Iron Brotherhood vest with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned every patch. "Brother Cole," Ghost said, clasping Marcus's hand. "Good to see you." "Good to see you too, Ghost. This is Sarah Mitchell." Ghost nodded respectfully. "Ma'am, I've been doing some digging. You're going to want to hear what I found." They gathered in the motel room, and Ghost spread a folder of documents on the small table. Tom Richardson, 47 years old, financial advisor, no criminal record, but that doesn't mean much. His wife Claire works as a receptionist at a medical clinic. They've been Emma's legal guardians for almost 3 years. "What about the house?" Marcus asked. "Quiet neighborhood. Nice place. But the neighbors I talked to, discreetly, said they hardly ever see Emma outside. She goes to school and comes straight home, No friends visiting, no activities. One neighbor said she tried to invite Emma to a neighborhood barbecue last summer, and Tom said Emma wasn't feeling well. That was the excuse every time. Sarah's hands were trembling. He's keeping her isolated. It gets worse, Ghost continued. I have a contact at Emma's school, a counselor who owes me a favor. She said Emma's grades have dropped significantly in the last 6 months. She's been showing signs of anxiety and depression. The counselor tried to talk to Tom about getting Emma some help, but he refused, said Emma was just going through a phase. Marcus exchanged a look with Sarah. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was ugly. There's one more thing, Ghost said, pulling out a photograph. I had someone watching the house this morning. Around 10 o'clock, Emma came out to get the mail. She was wearing long sleeves even though it was warm, and when she reached for the mailbox, her sleeve rode up. He handed the photograph to Sarah. It showed a teenage girl with dark hair and her mother's eyes. On her forearm, barely visible, were marks. Not cuts, bruises, the kind that come from someone grabbing too hard. Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. Marcus put a steady hand on her shoulder. We need to get her out of there, Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage and fear. Tonight. Right now. I understand how you feel, Marcus said calmly. But we have to be smart about this. If we rush in without a plan, Tom could claim we're harassing them. He could get a restraining order. He could take Emma and disappear. We need evidence. Real evidence that will hold up in court. Ghost nodded. I've already reached out to a family law attorney here in Portland. Woman named Diana Cross. She's handled cases like this before. She's willing to meet with you tomorrow morning. Tomorrow might be too late, Sarah said desperately. It won't be, Marcus assured her, because tonight we're going to make sure Emma knows we're here, and we're going to give her hope. The plan was simple. Emma walked to school every morning, the one time she was outside the house without Tom or Claire watching. Ghost had mapped her route. There was a coffee shop at the corner where her path turned toward the school. Tomorrow morning, Sarah would be waiting there, but first, they needed to let Emma know. That night, Ghost drove past the Richardson house while Marcus and Sarah watched from a distance. The house was dark except for a light in an upstairs window. Emma's room, according to Ghost's research. Can you get a message to her? Sarah asked. Ghost smiled slightly. Already done. One of my guys has a daughter at Emma's school. She's going to slip Emma a note in the morning. It'll say one thing. Your mom is at Java Corner at 7:30. She never stopped fighting for you. Sarah closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. All of you. I don't know how I'll ever repay this. You don't owe us anything, Marcus said. This is what we do. We protect the innocent. We stand for those who can't stand alone. That's not a debt. It's a calling. That night, Sarah barely slept. She lay in the motel bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining her daughter's face when she read that note. Would Emma believe it? Would she come? Or had 3 years of separation and Tom's manipulation destroyed the bond they once shared? Marcus sat by the window, keeping watch. He had been in this position many times before, the quiet hours before a mission, when the world held its breath and anything seemed possible. Around 3 a.m, Sarah spoke into the darkness. Marcus. Yeah? What if she doesn't want to see me? What if Tom has convinced her that I'm the enemy? Marcus considered the question. Then you'll have to show her otherwise. Not with words. Words are easy. With actions. With patience. With love that doesn't give up no matter how many times it gets pushed away. I've made so many mistakes. We all have. The measure of a person isn't whether they fall, it's whether they get back up. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, you sound like you're speaking from experience. Marcus looked out at the streetlights, remembering faces and places he had tried to forget. I lost my way once, he said quietly. After I left the Marines, I had seen too much, done too much. I didn't know who I was anymore without the uniform, without the mission. I drank. I pushed everyone away. I spent 2 years in a darkness so deep I didn't think I'd ever find my way out. What saved you? A brother. A man named Jack who rode with the Iron Brotherhood. He found me in a bar one night, barely conscious, drowning in my own misery. He could have walked away. Most people did, but he didn't. He sat down next to me and said, "You're not done yet. I can see it in your eyes. You've still got fight left in you, and I'm not leaving until you find it." Marcus turned to look at Sarah. He stayed with me for 3 days. He got me into a program. He sponsored my recovery. He introduced me to the Brotherhood. He gave me a reason to live again. Where is he now? He passed away 5 years ago. Heart attack. But before he died, he made me promise something. He said, "When you find someone who's lost the way you were lost, don't walk away. Be the hand that reaches into the darkness. Be the voice that says you're not done yet." Sarah understood. That's why you stopped at the gas station. That's why I stopped, and that's why we're here. Because Jack reached for me, and now I reach for others. That's how it works. That's how the light spreads. If this story is touching something deep inside you right now, pause and leave a comment saying, "The light spreads through those who choose to reach." I want to know who's watching, who's feeling this, who believes that one person can make a difference. Leave that comment, and let me know you're here. Morning came soft and gray, the Portland sky heavy with clouds that promised rain. Sarah dressed carefully, wanting to look like the mother Emma remembered, not the broken woman she had become in those dark years. Marcus drove her to Java Corner, arriving at 7 o'clock. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of fresh brewed coffee and baking pastries. They chose a table by the window where Sarah could watch the street. Ghost was positioned a block away, keeping an eye on the approach from the Richardson house. 2 other brothers were stationed at different points along the route, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. 7:15. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her coffee cup. 7:20. The minutes crawled by like hours. 7:25. Marcus reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "Breathe," he said. "She'll come." 7:28. And then Sarah saw her. Emma Mitchell walked around the corner with her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was taller than Sarah remembered, her features more defined, hovering in that space between childhood and adulthood. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was wearing the long sleeves that hid the bruises. She paused at the corner, looking around nervously. Her eyes scanned the street, the shops, the people passing by. And then she looked through the window of Java Corner, and she saw her mother. For a moment, neither of them moved. 3 years of separation, of longing, of anger and hurt and desperate hope hung in the air between them. Then Emma pushed open the door and walked inside. Sarah stood up, her legs barely supporting her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. All the speeches she had rehearsed, all the apologies she had prepared, evaporated in the reality of this moment. Emma stopped a few feet away. Her eyes were wet, her chin trembling. "Mom," she whispered, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Emma," Sarah breathed. "Oh, baby, I'm here. I'm finally here." And then Emma was in her arms, sobbing against her shoulder, 3 years of pain pouring out in a flood of tears. Sarah held her daughter tight, rocking her gently, whispering the words she had been waiting so long to say. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped fighting. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." They held each other for a long time, oblivious to the other customers, to the passage of time, to everything except the miracle of being together again. Finally, Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. She looked at Marcus, who had stepped away to give them privacy. "Who's he?" Emma asked. "A friend," Sarah said. "A very good friend. He helped me get here." Emma looked at Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "You're welcome." They sat down at the table and the words began to flow. Emma told her mother everything: the isolation, the control, the way Tom monitored her every move. She told her about the night she had called, about Tom's rage when he discovered she had been communicating with Sarah, about the grip on her arm that left the bruises she now hid beneath long sleeves. "He said I belonged to them," Emma said, her voice small. "He said I would never see you again. He said if I tried to run, he would make sure no one believed me." Sarah's heart broke and rebuilt itself in the same moment. The breaking was for what her daughter had endured. The rebuilding was for what she would do next. "Listen to me," Sarah said, taking Emma's hands. "You don't belong to anyone. You are your own person, with your own mind, your own heart, your own future. What Tom has done to you is wrong, and we're going to stop him." "How?" Emma asked desperately. "He has lawyers. He has the guardianship papers. Everyone believes him." "Not everyone," Marcus said, leaning forward. "We've been gathering evidence, photos, statements from neighbors, your school counselor's concerns. By this afternoon, an attorney named Diana Cross is going to file an emergency motion with the court. She's going to request an immediate investigation into your living conditions and a temporary transfer of custody back to your mother." Emma's eyes widened. "Is that possible? After everything that's happened?" "It's possible," Marcus said. "It won't be easy. Tom will fight back. But this time, your mother isn't alone, and neither are you." Emma looked at her mother, and something shifted in her expression. The fear was still there, but it was joined by something else now, something that looked like hope. "I don't have to go back there?" Emma asked. Sarah shook her head. "Not today. Diana Cross is meeting us in an hour. She's going to explain everything. And then we're going to figure out the next steps. Together." Emma started to cry again, but this time the tears were different. They were tears of relief, of release, of the weight finally lifting from her young shoulders. "I thought you forgot about me," Emma whispered. "I thought you stopped caring." "Never," Sarah said fiercely. "Not for 1 second. Every day I thought about you. Every day I fought to get back to you. And when the system wouldn't help me, I got on a motorcycle and drove 1,500 miles because nothing was going to keep me from my daughter." The meeting with Diana Cross went better than Sarah had dared to hope. The attorney was sharp, experienced, and passionate about protecting children. She reviewed the evidence that Ghost and his brothers had gathered and nodded with grim satisfaction. "This is enough to get the ball rolling," she said. "I'm going to file for an emergency hearing this afternoon. Given the evidence of isolation and the physical marks on Emma's arm, I believe we have grounds for an immediate intervention." "What about Tom?" Sarah asked. "What will he do when he finds out?" "He'll be served with papers," Diana explained. "He'll have to appear in court. In the meantime, I'm going to request that Emma be placed in temporary protective custody, with you as the designated guardian." Emma squeezed her mother's hand. "Can that really happen?" "It can," Diana said. "The courts prioritize the safety and well-being of the child. Once a judge sees this evidence, once they hear Emma's testimony, I believe we have a strong case." That afternoon, the papers were filed. Tom Richardson was served at his office, and according to Ghost's sources, his reaction was explosive. He called his lawyer immediately. He called Claire. He paced his office like a caged animal. But there was nothing he could do. The wheels of justice, so long stuck in bureaucratic mud, were finally turning. That evening, Sarah and Emma stayed at the motel, protected by Marcus and his brothers. They talked for hours, filling in the gaps of 3 years apart. Sarah told Emma about her recovery, about the jobs she had worked, about the apartment she had found and prepared for Emma's return. Emma showed her mother the stories she had been writing, tales of brave girls who faced impossible odds and found their way home. Around 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Marcus answered it, his hand near the concealed weapon he carried for protection. But it was just Ghost, holding a folder. Got something you should see, Ghost said. He spread the contents on the table. Bank records, emails, documentation that told a story Sarah had never known. Tom Richardson has been receiving money from your ex-husband, Ghost explained. Monthly payments for the last 3 years. Looks like David didn't just abandon you and Emma. He paid his brother to keep her, to make sure you never got her back. Sarah stared at the documents, her mind reeling. David, the man she had once loved, the father of her child, he had orchestrated all of this. Why? She whispered. Why would he do this? Control, Marcus said quietly. Some people can't stand to lose. They'd rather destroy what they can't have. Emma was looking at the papers with an expression that was both hurt and strangely relieved. Dad did this? He paid Uncle Tom to keep me away from you? It looks that way, sweetheart, Sarah said. Emma was silent for a moment. Then she said something that surprised everyone. Good. Now I know. Now I know exactly who he is. And I never have to wonder again. There was a strength in her voice that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. Her daughter had been through hell, but she hadn't been broken. She had been forged. The court hearing took place 3 days later. Sarah, Emma, Marcus, and Diana Cross sat on one side of the courtroom. Tom and Claire Richardson sat on the other, flanked by their expensive lawyer. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Helen Moreno, known for her no-nonsense approach and her dedication to child welfare. She reviewed the evidence with careful attention, asking pointed questions that made Tom's lawyer squirm. When Emma took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke clearly and without hesitation, describing the isolation, the control, the fear that had become her constant companion. She rolled up her sleeve and showed the judge the bruises that were now fading to yellow, but still visible. Tom's lawyer tried to object, tried to spin alternative explanations, tried to paint Sarah as an unfit mother whose past disqualified her from custody. But the evidence was too strong. Emma's testimony was too compelling. And the bank records that Diana introduced, showing the payments from David to Tom, demolished any claim that the Richardsons had acted out of genuine concern for Emma's welfare. When Judge Moreno delivered her ruling, her voice was firm and final. It is the judgment of this court that the guardianship granted to Thomas and Claire Richardson is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Full custody of Emma Mitchell is awarded to her mother, Sarah Mitchell. Additionally, this court is referring the matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential criminal conduct, including child endangerment and conspiracy to interfere with parental rights. Sarah broke down in tears. Emma threw her arms around her mother. Marcus and Ghost exchanged a look of quiet satisfaction. Tom Richardson sat frozen, his face pale, his world crumbling around him. Claire was crying silently beside him. Their lawyer was already packing up his briefcase, knowing there was nothing more to be done. As they left the courtroom, Marcus pulled Sarah aside. "This isn't quite over," he said. "The criminal investigation will take time. Tom might try something desperate. You need to be careful." "I know," Sarah said, "but for the first time in 3 years I'm not scared, because I'm not alone anymore." She looked at her daughter, who was talking to Ghost, showing him something on her phone with a shy smile. "You gave me more than a ride to Portland," Sarah said to Marcus. "You gave me back my daughter. You gave me back my life." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't give you anything. I just helped you find what was already yours. You did the hard work. You never gave up. That's not something anyone can give you, and that comes from inside." That evening, the Iron Brotherhood gathered at a roadside bar on the outskirts of Portland. It was a celebration of sorts, not a loud one, but meaningful. Brothers from 3 different chapters came together to raise a glass to Sarah and Emma, to the mission accomplished, to the reminder of why they wore the patches. Marcus stood at the bar, nursing a coffee, watching the scene with quiet contentment. Ghost appeared beside him. "You missed the memorial ride," Ghost observed. "I did." "Think the brothers in Flagstaff understood?" Marcus nodded slowly. This is what the memorial is really about. Not the ceremony, not the speeches. It's about honoring those who served by continuing to serve, by standing up when others won't, by being the help that someone needs when no one else is there. Ghost raised his glass. To the ones we ride for. To the ones we ride for, Marcus echoed. Across the room, Sarah caught his eye. She walked over, Emma beside her. We're going to head out tomorrow, Sarah said. Back to Arizona to pick up my bike and then home. Well, our new home. Emma's never seen the apartment. I hope she likes it. I'm sure she will, Marcus said. Emma stepped forward. She was holding something, a folded piece of paper. I wrote something for you, she said, suddenly shy. It's not much, just a story I've been working on, about a girl who gets lost in the desert, and a knight on an iron horse who finds her and helps her find her way home. She handed the paper to Marcus. It's not finished yet, but I wanted you to have what I've got so far. Marcus took the paper, unexpectedly moved. Thank you, Emma. I'll read it tonight. The ending, Emma said, is that the knight doesn't need to find his own home, because home isn't a place. It's the people you help along the way. It's the lives you touch. It's the difference you make. Marcus looked at the young girl who had been through so much, who had found strength in her darkest hour, who was already turning her pain into something beautiful. That's a good ending, he said. I thought so too. Sarah put her arm around her daughter. Ready to go home? Emma looked at her mother, then at Marcus, then at the room full of bikers who had become unlikely family. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. They walked out into the night, mother and daughter, their future uncertain but full of possibility. Marcus watched them go, feeling the familiar mix of satisfaction and sadness that came at the end of every mission. Ghost appeared beside him again. You okay, brother? Marcus nodded. Just thinking about roads, the ones we choose, the ones that choose us. And which was this? Marcus smiled. Both. That's the beauty of it. We think we're just riding from one place to another, but really, the road is taking us exactly where we need to be. 2 weeks later, Marcus was back on Route 66, heading to the next gathering, the next mission, the next soul who needed finding. His phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, a photo of Emma in her new room, surrounded by books, smiling at the camera. The caption read, She's home. We're home. Thank you for everything. Marcus tucked the phone away and focused on the road ahead. The desert stretched out before him, endless and beautiful, full of secrets and strangers and stories waiting to be discovered. His bike's engine hummed beneath him, a steady heartbeat that matched his own. The wind carried the scent of sage and freedom. The sky was painted in the colors of sunset, orange and gold and deep, forgiving blue. And somewhere behind him, a mother and daughter were rebuilding their lives, one day at a time, one story at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Because that's how it works. That's how the light spreads. One person reaches for another. One hand pulls someone out of the darkness. One stranger becomes family. And the road goes on. If you watched until the end, it means this story touched you. It means you understand that sometimes the greatest adventures begin when everything breaks down. It means you believe in the power of human connection. Leave a comment saying, I watched until the end. So I can know who you are, who really connects with these stories, who believes that kindness can change the world. And if this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage, redemption, and the bonds that make us human. Because the road doesn't end here. There are more stories to tell, more lives to touch, more moments when ordinary people become heroes for strangers. Until next time, keep riding, keep reaching, keep spreading the light.